Well, everyone, this, at least in my head, but I've been pretty long-winded today. So in my head, this is today we'll finish a couple of minutes faster. Um, but again, that's in my head because I've been long-winded all day. Um, but I want to thank you all again, those who, whether you're joining today for the first time or um, if you've been with us for all 4 weeks for just carving a few minutes out of your time each Sunday morning. I know that you're normally gathered for something else, but continuing to join us as we walk through this journey that one of my mentors and closest friends who passed away last year, unfortunately, Dr. Love Henry Welch, said it's a history that's too hard to remember, but too important to forget. So history that's really hard to walk through at some times, some points in times, but it's too important to forget. Why is that? I think one of my associates, Christian Brooks, put it best that in order for us to move forward truly as a country and as a world, we can attempt to erase or whatever word we want to use for this tragic history, attempt to erase it until we address it fully, until the reparations are paid. Paid. I always say that because a lot of folks kind of want to go down the road of, well, reparations. We even had one, who was it, Mitch McConnell or somebody that said something like, well, we gave you a black president. I mean, until those reparations are paid, this country's foundation is corrupt. And you know what happens to any house whose foundation is corrupt? Ultimately, that house falls, and or at least for as long as you know it's going to have problems. Um, I will tell you as we go into this week's presentation, again, one of my reasons for thanking you is that you stayed and you've been a part of the table, no matter how hard it got. On Thursday of this past week, I was a part of a panel discussion, really hard discussion live on Facebook about the topic of reparations, about the history of Black folk here in America. And you know, we use StreamYard instead of any of the instead of Zoom. And so in StreamYard, you can't see the people per se, but you can see the numbers going up, as in how many people are joining you. And I think a lot of times when folks think Black history or, you know, starting to address the issues of African people in America, that everything is going to be about singing and dancing, right? It's just we're entertained, right? So when you start talking about the hard stuff, people tune out. Okay, so in that particular panel discussion, for the first 5 to 10 minutes, the numbers were skyrocketing. We went from like 10 people to close to 200 people like that in a matter of seconds. And when we got into the meat of the discussion, about 5 minutes later, and it was an hour and a half long discussion, 5 minutes later, those numbers started to drop. They dropped down to about 40 people, and ultimately we finished that final hour with fewer than 30 people, right? We are thankful for the people that came and stayed, but at the end of the day, we're clear that some of these conversations are hard. So again, I thank you for being a part of these difficult conversations. Someone said you can't fix what you don't face. So let's see here. There. Okay. So as Jamie reminded us, the name of our presentation for the last few weeks has been the Stretching Out Hymn Interpretation in the Black Church. And though much of what we've spent our time on over the last 3 weeks has been about the rearrangement of hymns in worship, some of the rearrangements served other purposes, specifically, and as some of you've probably heard of, some of those rearrangements served the purpose of encoded messages. Also, these messages were changed to songs of the movement during the civil rights movement. So we'll talk about some of that as we go through this last day of our discussion. I do want to kind of touch bases for maybe there's one or two folks that uh, are here for the first time, but just to kind of give us a 2 minute synopsis. We started with reading Psalm 137, verses 1 through 4. By the rivers of Babylon, there we sat down and there we wept when we remembered Zion, when we remembered Africa. On the willows, there we hung our harps. For there our captors, our enslavers, asked us for songs, and our tormentors asked for myrrh, saying, sing us one of your songs of Africa. How could we sing our songs in a foreign land? I imagine that for most of us, we've heard the regularly sang hymns of the church, but I shared in several cases how some of the songs we hear regularly were rearranged by my ancestors for a lot of purposes and a lot of reasons. And most of them were out of the well of pain, out of the well of needing the songs to serve the purpose of sharing not just with each other, but singing and crying out to God about our pain. Oftentimes, those songs did uh, stir people at the level of their emotion, and worship services can or did become very emotional. I read a particular clip from a researcher who went to a service and said, although deeply offended by the worship practices of the Blacks, she was surprised by her own reaction. She sensed an invisible power that seemed to hold her in its grasp as they were gathered in the church, where they nearly suffocated from the heat and wild excitement. The excitement was working upon us, she said, and sent the blood surging in wild torrents to the brain that reeled in darkened terror under the shock. A few moments later, a few moments more, she related, even I would have shrieked in unison with the crowd. And so some of us ask about how, in the midst of hearing some of these songs, it caused us to rock and get goosebumps. It is because of the palpable feeling of the emotion and the pain in the lyrics of these songs. So again, we talked about some of the hymns that were rearranged. We talked about A Charge to Keep I Have. We talked about uh, Guide Me, O Thy Great Jehovah, Pilgrims Through This Barren Land, and many other songs. The quote I read, by the way, came from a book called The Burden of Black Religion, The Burden of Black Religion by Curtis Evans. In your Amazon shopping time, I encourage you to grab that one. It'll be a blessing to your library. There's another book by Dr. Riggins Earl. Dr. Riggins Earl. Um, Dr. Earl's book told us about how, and I'll get you the name of Dr. Earl's book in just a moment, but Dr. Riggins Earl's book talked about how our captors thought of us as bodiless souls, and specifically that slave owners thought it was important that Black folks' souls got to heaven, but not their bodies. And we even talked about when you walk into a church going forward, especially if that church was erected before the 1900s, that you take a look at the balcony of that church. Take a look at the balcony and stand in awe that at one point in history, it was thought that Black folk could not go to heaven, and that balcony was called nigger heaven, because that was as close as our captors and our oppressors thought that we could ever get to heaven, by being in the balcony. So today I want to move us to a conversation about the fact that worship was not just a place um, for celebration. It was a place for deep release, and it was a place of freedom. I'm going to invite my wife to tell a really, really short story here in a second, but it is about how, in going to worship service, um, oftentimes then and now, it is the only place that people's full humanity was recognized. Um, and so that was the one of the reasons for stretching out, for being in a particular place as we were uh, in the at the level of the spirit, is because this is the only place we could stretch out and be our authentic selves and be recognized as fully human. I want to say this before Kara speaks. The name of Dr. Riggins Earl's book is Dark Symbols and Obscure Signs. Dark Symbols and Obscure Signs. So again, Dr. Riggins Earl's book is Dark Symbols and Obscure Signs, and Curtis Evans' book is The Burden of Black Religion. So I'm going to invite Kara to talk about her grandmother for just a couple of minutes, maybe three, because I've been long-winded, so you get to be short-winded.
In the context of
Talking about how we were reflecting last week, talking about her grandmother and how her grandmother um, was in a particular way, a servant until her Sunday, when she got a chance to be fully human. And so, if you'll talk about her childhood and then so forth.
greetings. So glad to be with you all again today. I was I picked up on the conversation about being in church and where oftentimes it was a place where we could go and I believe be human, but also in the midst of giving our troubles over to God and praying, it was in those moments there was celebration. My grandmother was a testament to what it means to overcome. At age 8, she was cooking and cleaning in white people's homes. And then at age 13, when she came into womanhood, she had to nurse white babies. And she said she didn't like it at all. When she was 13. She had a sister who was 3 years older than her, who was at 16 was nursing white babies. But my grandmother decided, because she didn't like it, she learned to cook and sew. So at 13, 14, 15, she began to cook and sew, and that got her out of those responsibilities. By the time she was 21, 22, she had been working as a servant for a while, picking cotton in the fields, just, you know the story, the one that they don't want us to tell. That's what she did. And at age 22, she decided to leave the country and come to Atlanta. And because she had honed her skills as a cook, she became a cook. And that's what she did for most of her life in my lifetime.
Mhm.
And when I asked her what was her favorite thing to do, it was to cook. But what she really loved to do was go to church on Sunday. On Sunday, my grandmother would put on her best Sunday frock, her best Sunday hat after cooking dinner or finishing dinner, and wait with bated breath for someone to pick her up. And when someone wasn't coming, my grandmother got up. She walked to the bus stop a half a mile away in her Sunday shoes with her purse and her hat, and she rode the bus to church. And that's where we would meet her sometimes. And my grandmother served, there was a thing called the willing workers. I don't know what they did to this day other than raise money and give gifts to the pastor, but she served on that committee and she served. But what I remember most, she had a quiet praise. And I used to wonder why she was always so quiet, but she was always giving thanks because her journey, they told her she couldn't escape the life of being a servant. They told her she couldn't escape the life of cooking for others and wanting to be and not getting paid for it. But she did. And she made a home and she raised a family and she helped to raise grandchildren. And for me, that's the story of church, coming and thanking God and celebrating life in a way that nobody can take it from you. It's yours in that moment.
Amen. Amen. And I just thought it was moving um, to take this. I thought it was right to hear from one of our ancestors through the voice of her granddaughter to that real story um, about, these days we harp on other countries about child labor laws, but we didn't have that for my ancestors. Um, you heard about how young she was, but again, when they got to church, their humanity, the full humanity, was recognized. So I want to thank you, Kara, and then move on to a couple of uh, ways of how these songs for those enslaved people, for those people even in the era of Jim Crow, uh, how these songs had different meanings sometime in the lyrics. Um, Many of you have heard the song Wade in the Water. Again, most of the time we hear the song Wade in the Water, we hear the version, even though it's a song of mostly of the Black church, we hear it in the way sang by the Fisk Jubilee singers. And I don't want anybody to come away from this thinking I don't like the Fisk Jubilee singers. But the Fisk Jubilee singers sang Wade in the Water um, in the way that was how do I say this uh, most easily digestible, easily accepted. Kara says, right? And so what we got was a version of Wade in the Water. Oops, doing something here. The version of Wade in the Water we got was first of all, it was converted, if you will, to um, a song around baptism, because that's how we often do. We tend to spiritualize or over spiritualize stuff, right? And so what we get is this song that's again, I'll sing it in the tone of the Fisk Jubilee singers. It went wade in the water, wade in the water, children, wade in the water. God's gonna trouble the water. God's gonna trouble the water. God's gonna trouble the waters, right? And we get that version. In fact, we even get that version. If you saw the movie Harriet, that's the version that Hollywood knows, right? That's not the version of the song as it was originally written. That's not the version our ancestors sang. The version of Wade in the Water that our ancestors sang, which, by the way, Harriet Tubman and others used as a way of telling escaping slaves to get off the trail and into the water to make sure dogs of slave catchers couldn't sniff their scent, couldn't smell their scent. And so people walking through water did not leave a scent trail that dogs could follow. And so the way that Wade in the Water was done by our ancestors sounded more like this. It went like this. Let's see. Wade in the water, wade in the water, wade in the water. Save your soul from sin. Jesus is calling. Wait in the wall. And telling you, wait, wait in the wall. Come on and wait, wait in the water. Save your soul from sin. Jesus is called. Wait in the wall. I'm telling you, wait, wait in the wall. Come on and wait, wait in the water. Save your soul from sin. Well, old Satan in the water, he's mad in the water because he done lost a soul he thought he had. And thank God now I'm free at last. Jesus is calling, wait in the wall and telling you to wait, wait in the water. Come on and wait, wait in the water to save your soul from sin. So that's more like what our ancestors heard. Um, because again, as you heard in the lyrics, it wasn't about just saving your soul from these carnal sins, but saving your body and your soul from the sin of enslavement. And so we wade in this water and we can save ourselves from that sin. So when you hear that song going forward, there's another message in there that says that this is the time of escape that's happening. It became a song of the movement, as did others, that we're moving now to save our souls from the sin of oppression. Um, let's see. So I'm going to skip this slide and come back to it. Another note that we got in our being taught Christianity under the in the West and in America is that God was beyond us, that God is in the clouds, right? God was not present, that you had to reach and die and go somewhere to get to God. But that's not what our ancestors understood. They understood that our ancestors and God exist in a cloud, not a cloud like a weather cloud, but in a space just above us, constantly keeping watch over us. That shows up in one of the most profound Afro-Asiatic documents we know of. It's called the Bible, and we see it in Philippians, where we are surrounded by such a great cloud of witnesses. That cloud is our ancestors, your ancestors, in fact, that are waiting just above our heads, giving us guidance. So there is a version of a song that was sung in the church even until just a few years ago. And that song was Up Above My Head, I Hear Music in the Air. And it went sort of like, up above my head, up above my head, I hear music in the air. Up above my head, up above my head, I hear music in the air. I really do believe there's a God somewhere, somewhere. Well, what's happened in recent years is that people have begun again to embrace African spirituality. African spirituality does not have, as a part of its way, some of the things of some of the Abrahamic understandings of spirituality. That is, in Christianity, there's the prohibition. If you're a Christian, you can't be anything else, right? But if you think of other faith groups, Buddhist, Taoist, and other African spiritualities, it's not that one. It's practice what you practice, just understand who you are. And in who you are, you can, a lot of times there's what's called synchronicity or synchronization of those concepts with ours. For example, it shows up a lot of times in our hymn lyrics. You've heard the hymn that says, how's it go? It says that when I fall on my knees with my face to the rising sun, oh Lord, have mercy if you please. We sing it and it's beautiful, but that's Islam, right? Falling on our knees with our face to the rising sun, right? So it's not that we have to be so restrictive. The creator is the creator. We can't change that. Just different people have recognized that creator in different ways over time. And so another thing then that has happened in recent years, and when I say recent, I'm talking about the last 20 or so, is that some of these songs have begun to be retranslated across other genres, right? Not sure of how many of you all have heard of the artist that's on the screen, Ruthie Foster. But in your copious free time, please go and check out Ruthie Foster. Ruthie Foster is actually a blues lady. She's a blues singer, and she is somebody special. She has one song that she retranslated, which is the song I sang earlier. Up above my head, I hear music in the air. I really do believe there's a God somewhere, somewhere. That's the nice little pure way of doing Above My Head. I'm going to let you listen to Ruthie Foster's version. Okay, hold tight. I was supposed to cut that off a minute and a half ago. I got caught up. I'm sorry. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did. But again, that's how a song that was originally just for church got translated into blues, and again now it's being introduced to, or has been introduced to, a new audience. Because one way we all know, those of us who are elders in the church know, the one way you can get somebody who's not a regular churchgoer to not listen to a song is tell them it comes from church. But if you put it in a setting like that, change it a little bit, then it's introduced to a new audience. So, and that goes on into other genres. I want you to, I have another one. This is another artist. This artist is Liz Wright. Liz Wright is a amazing jazz artist. If you've not heard Liz Wright before now, certainly go out and Google and listen to some more Ruthie Foster's music. But I also want to present to some and introduce to others Liz Wright. Liz Wright has roots here in Atlanta and shows up here a lot. But she's a profound jazz artist. And as we all know, most of these artists have roots in and came out of the church. So I want you to prepare now to hear a jazz rendition of Walk With Me, Lord. Now, again, the sort of church version of Walk With Me is walk with me, Lord, walk with me, Lord, walk with me while I'm on this tedious journey. I want you, Lord, to walk with me. Churchy version. Here's Liz Wright.
Walk with me, Lord, walk with me. Walk with me, Lord, walk with me. While I'm on this tedious journey, Lord, walk with me, Lord.
So I did better that time. I stopped it before it got too long. But that's a beautiful, that whole concert is beautiful. So hit YouTube, Liz Wright. She has others that she's translated into jazz, but she's an amazing jazz artist. So we can see it comes in and out of the blues market. We know from James Cone's work that the blues and gospel are not too far apart. And so there's that, but there's also how it shows up in jazz. But last but not least, certainly not least, there was a moment in time in the late 80s through now, where these gospel songs, or these songs of the movement, became not only songs that were translated into blues and jazz, but also songs that got translated into R&B and hip hop. I thought I would never live to see that. But the R&B time was actually the time when my wife and I were a part of what we used to call big choir, where it was nothing to see, even though now in larger churches, the, pre-COVID, you probably have seen churches yourself with choirs of 200 people. But when we were growing up, there were times when we would have a choir where there's 150, 200 people in the choir stand and not even 200 people in the audience because everybody wanted to be in the choir, right? And so one of the artists that did a wonderful job of translating a song of the movement, song of the traditions, was the Reverend Dr. Timothy Wright. There is a song that we grew up with, a hymn that went like, I'm so glad trouble don't last always. Oh, I'm so glad trouble don't last always. I'm so glad trouble don't last always. Oh my Lord, what shall I do? What shall I do? Right? That was Trouble Don't Last Always, right? And that was a song of lament, but reassurance that, that whatever our condition is, it don't last always, right? Here's Dr. Timothy Wright's adaptation of that song as an R&B song.
Together. Hey, hey, yes, I am. Trouble don't last always. I'm so glad. Hey, yes, I am. Trouble don't last always. Can I get a witness? I'm so glad. Hey, hey, hey. Trouble don't last always. I know he'll be there.
sorry, we got the rocking and reeling over here. We forgot again. But whether it be the bluesy sounds of Ruthie Foster, the jazz remakes of Liz Wright, or the R&B stylings of Reverend Dr. Timothy Wright, uh, I think it's important for us all to remember that God has been with us and continues to be with us, even in this full-on ecology of grief that we're in, loss of uh, jobs, family members, loss of stability. We're in a time now where there's war and rumors of war. One thing we have to remain assured of, as my ancestors did, and that is trouble don't last always. Um, you may not be able to raise your hand in a testament that says God is good all the time, but you can raise your hand to a testament that God is God all the time. And we recognize the full control of God in all times, times past, as well as the days to come. We pray that God continue to give us unity, continue to give us equality, continue to give us liberty and freedom. My enslavement is your enslavement until all of us, until any of us are free, all of us are not free. We have to all be free. That's more than just freedom across racial lines. That's freedom across gender lines, across lines of sexual preference, across lines of economy. We must all be free. So we pray that God continue to be with us and continue to remind us and continue to have us uplifted through lyrics of these songs, present and old. I pray that you keep these recordings, keep these songs, and add them to your repertoire as you will. I made reference to the YouTube link, so you can go back and listen to the full length of the songs. And if I can be support to you, Fari, and of course, my good friend Kelly at any time, and to any of you all, please let us know. I want to pause now to say thank you, and certainly time for any additional questions or anything you'd like to share with us. Thank you.
Bless your heart. I wanted to ask Kara about her grandmother. This is a little upsetting. Was your grandmother nursing up with a bottle? Was she breastfeeding? Was she raped and bore a child, or somehow bore a child then?
No, well, that I don't know if she was raped, but at the point where the tradition is at the point where they became able to bear children, they began to nurse. So you were fully equipped to give milk and feed babies. So you don't have to have had a child in order to produce milk if a baby suckles at your breast. And there were Black children all over the world, and I'm sure in other cultures as well, but they nurse white babies. For whatever reason, there were white mothers who either didn't like it or couldn't nurse, or didn't take the time for it. But these were tasks given to young Black girls.
Thank you. I guess I've been ignorant, but thank you.
You're welcome.
Finest. Okay, thank you. Thank you so much for all of this. It's been wonderful, and I've learned a lot. So I was just going to piggyback on Kathy's question, because that was going to be my question too. So it was like they were involuntary wet nurses, essentially.
Yes, they were wet nurses.
And involuntary wet nurses, yeah.
It's voluntary, okay. But it was the work. Imagine it was the work that was given a quarter a day, or you had the choice of doing it or not doing it, eating or not eating.
Right. No, it's awful. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Okay. Thank you, Kathy, for being brave enough to ask that, because it was my question too. But the other question I had is, you, sir, have said a couple of times when you've referred to America, you've used the term America.
Yes.
I'm curious about that. So
it's a play on the, we refer to America as America, as in KKK.
Right, that's it.
Yeah.
Ah. Okay. Thank you.
It's a way of recognizing a history that's there.
Yeah, I get that. Yeah, thank you.
Well, I think maybe I will jump in just because we are short on time, just to reiterate the thanks and the the piece that sticking in my mind today is the you can't fix what you don't face.
Mm.
I'm gonna hang on to that, and I think that you are part of helping us to face. So I'm just so grateful that you're willing to be part of that process with us and teach us, and so hopefully help move towards healing for a lot of us. So, as we move forward as a church, you can be sure that I'll be reporting into you to see how this work is going to be rippling out, its effects, and yeah, I don't know if you caught that, but we have a Plymouth, Seattle YouTube channel, and so these recordings are going to be up on our YouTube channel for those who weren't able to make it in the
Amen.
and
Amen.
so certainly you also could always reference that, and that will
Amen.
live on there. Um,
Amen.
so
Well,
I
thank you
think,
so much.
oh yeah, no, it's just been awesome. I think I'm
Amen.
gonna let's just see. Are there any last comments or questions for these guys?
No,
Tom?
I just think we need to do a big round of applause if they can
I
hear.
think so. I think
'Cause
so
that was
too.
Uh,
Let's just let everybody unmute and give a big.
Yay, thank
Blessings to
you
you
so
all.
much.
Blessings to you all. You all continue to press on, and you're a wonderful church. I actually may be there in the next couple of months, that is in Seattle. And so I'll be
Awesome.
sure to make a way to drop by to see you all.
Oh
And,
boy. Well, we got to have you line out a hymn for us and share
amen.
church. Oh man, that'd be so amazing.
That would be great. You and
Amen.
Cara.
Yeah.
Amen.
Which, by the
Amen.
way, everybody, Reverend Carlton is going to be one of our special music pieces in worship this morning. So
Amen.
y'all
Yay.
better be there.
Okay.
Amen. Well, you all have the best Sunday ever, and we look forward to seeing you all again soon.